Coming up on this episode of the Mario Rosenstock Podcast.
My mother had been sick. She's passed away. She was 60 when she died. And when she'd be there, she'd call me out, sometimes be there looking after her, and she just want tea and toast and stuff like that. And so just going, cup of tea and all that. I'd be a character. I'd be, how are you, Jerry? Come on. Father Michael here. She's no idea who's here, God. And I'd start her laughing. And it was that thing of what I call the comedy muscle that we all have from performing and performing was getting defined from trying to cheer up my mother who was sick at the time.
But that's brilliant that the thing that drove you to do what you do can still be remembered all these years later. So what about you, Tony?
I think I should have answered first because that was really deep.
Well, there are a lot of stories and memories and laughs in this episode because that's what happens when you get three comedians around a table, I suppose, talking about what led them to do what they do. And it's also because my guests, Tony Kelly and Karl Spain, have just launched a podcast of their own called Do You Remember?, where they talk to well-known people about their earliest memories and what inspired them to becoming who they are today. You might remember Tony from previous episodes of this podcast. He's the Waterford comedian who dreamt of making a movie, and after a long, hard period of hard work, grit and determination, he made an award-winning movie called The Hurler, and that's been in cinemas nationwide and also features on Amazon Prime. Karl Spain, on the other hand, is of course one of Ireland's best-known comedians, but maybe what you're not so familiar with is that he's a very successful career as a writer for other comedians. He's crafted gags for performers like Kevin Bridges and Al Porter and many others. Together, Tony and Karl have created this brand new GoLoud podcast called Do You Remember? I was one of their first guests, and I also wanted to turn the tables on them and learn about their childhood experiences that shaped them and led them to become comedians. And the three of us got stuck into a rare old chat.
I had a really hard time in school, but I remember being funny, not just in my friend group at home, but doing it in school and making the lads laugh. The currency of that meant I wasn't getting a grueling in between walking to classes and stuff like that.
I had achieved some small success as an actor, but I was going backwards rather than forwards. And I felt like this waiting by the phone business for Werner Herzog to ring is a fool's game, to be honest. Especially when you've got as much energy as me. And, you know, I would turn to drink and drugs if that energy can't be transferred.
Hello, friend.
Exactly.
All of a sudden, my body just went up and I started delivering the jokes and gesticulating.
And I said it to him when he came off, and he was, that's exactly what I could hear the change. It was like a gear change.
I was so annoyed, and I was taking my annoyance of those people out on the audience.
Yeah. But not only is this a great chat about childhood memories and what shapes us as adults, it's also an insight into the craft of comedy and performance, which I think you might find interesting in its own right. But first, it's been a crazy week, not only around the world, Trump's tariffs and everything, but even at home here in the Dail. Will Verona Murphy, Ceann Comhairle survive a vote of no confidence? There's a few people waiting in the long grass who have their eye on the big job if she doesn't, and they've been expressing their views and interest on the Mario Rosenstock Podcast hotline.
Hi, you've reached the Mario Rosenstock Podcast. Please leave a message.
Yes, Mario, Pascal Donoghue here, contacting you regarding the possible vacancy in the Ceann Comhairle chair. Of course, as you know, I am a strong believer in everyone having an equal voice. That's what democracy is all about. That's why we vote for who we vote when we vote for them. But I'll tell you one thing. If those fucking lefties get away with talking bollocks for too long as Ceann Comhairle, I'd shut them down, so I would. Knock the bleeding bollocks off them. Thank you very much for listening to my call. This is Michael O'Leary regarding this Ceann Comhairle business. Look, just put me in the chair and I'll tell these mugs to shut up. And they will actually shut up. As Ceann Comhairle, I will introduce charges for speaking time. €50 for 1 minute. Penalties of €1,000 if you go 10 seconds over the 1 minute. It'll be charged on a per minute basis and you'll have to pay in advance using a little card reader on your chair. Hi Mario, Miriam O'Callaghan here. You know, as Ceann Comhairle, I think I'd like to kill them with kindness. When any of these lefty mugs or independent chancellors get out of hand, I'll climb slowly out of my chair, sidle over to them while staring them straight in the eye, and patting my eyelids, I'll gently ask them to lower their voice while stroking their face. We'll just see what happens from there. Let's just say that I would do anything for democracy. Mario! Ivan Yates here.
And Mark Cooper.
We think it's time for a double act, and me and Matt are throwing our hats into the ring.
Yeah.
We'll bring a bit of Statler and Waldorf to this freak show. When tensions get high, I'll drown it all out with my trademark theatrical disbelief, and I'll get even shoutier than the most shouty of the TDs.
Yeah, then in my role as a good cop, I'll calm it all down. They'll be so in awe of our double act, Ivan, they'll forget why they were pissed off in the first place.
An exclusive comedy every week, of course, on the Mario Rosenstock podcast. And if you want to come and see me live, I have remaining dates in the Gift Grub Live 25 tour. I'm in the INEC in Killarney on the 5th of April, Castlebar on the 12th of April, and the TLT in Drogheda on the 19th of April. And that's it until the autumn, where I come back for a second leg, including 3 nights at the Gaiety. But first, I would love to thank our sponsor, Deluxe Bathrooms, Ireland's premium bathroom and tile retailer. So listen, folks, if you're dreaming of a bathroom that combines, luxury, functionality and style, then it is time to check out my sponsor, the Spring Bathroom and Tile Sale at Deluxe Bathrooms. Save up to 70% store-wide on Europe's biggest brands, plus their amazing spend and save offer is back. Get €100 off for every 1,000 spent. Prices slashed on freestanding baths, tiles, tapware and more. In store at Dundalk Retail Park, Little Island in Cork, or online at deluxebathrooms.ie. And again, my ever lasting appreciation and gratitude to Martin and everybody in Deluxe Bathrooms, not only for getting involved with my podcast, but also circling the entire podcast industry themselves and jumping in. This sale, by the way, must end on March 30th, so get your skates on. Thank you so much to deluxebathrooms.ie for being the sponsor of this podcast. So, as I mentioned, I was delighted to be asked by Tony Kelly and Karl Spain to be one of their very first guests on this GoLoud podcast of theirs. Do you remember? It's called. So, we did the interview in the GoLoud studio, and when we were finished, I decided I'd turn the tables on them and record a spontaneous conversation that they didn't know was going to happen for my own podcast. And this is what happened.
So, imagine this now. This is fucking really weird now.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Mario Rosenstock Podcast, lads. Do you know what? It's been a long time since I've seen you.
I know.
And it's great. Can you tell me, Karl Spain and Tony Kelly, who came up with the idea for the podcast? What is it and what's it all about? Tony.
Well,
yeah, Tony is the answer.
Yeah, I had come up with the idea for the podcast because I suppose I had done this mental health podcast.
Right.
Called Me Head is Wrecked with Tony Kelly, right? And I thought it was a great idea to start. And listen, it did very well for me, but I found myself coming out going, oh my God, I'm depressed out of my head, because I was talking to people about such deep subjects. And people were going, you're supposed to be a comedian or a comedic performer. And listen, I love listening to the interviews, but I was taking on all the problems. And I went, I'd love to do something comedic. So anyway, I had this idea of, do you remember, with Tony Kelly and someone. I was like, who could I do it with? And then Karl and myself did a film called The Hurler together, which, the three of us were in.
I was in.
Yeah.
Karl, who did you play in The Hurler?
I played the guard.
The guard. The Hurler is, by the way, is it still on Amazon?
It is on Amazon
It
Prime.
didn't get sent off or anything, did it?
No, it went to number 1 the weekend it came out, actually.
Hickey, what's my name again?
Garda Cullum Hickey.
Cullum Hickey,
is your
yeah.
character. And you play a character called...
Mario Rosenstock.
That's right, yeah. So anyway,
You were our third choice.
Well, Karl was my second choice.
The only character I can't do is myself, Karl.
But myself, and I was talking to actually Patrick Hawley, who produces this show, and I said, I'd love to do this show. It's like, do you remember? And me talking, I was pitching them what the show was, that, we get guests on and go into their past and talk about the fun things in their childhood and adulthood that brought them to where they are now. He said, who would you do it with? Would you do it on your own? I went, no, I want to do it with someone.
Yeah.
He said, well, I could pitch it to GoLoud. And I went, myself and Karl Spain will do it. And
Why did you rush into saying Karl Spain?
because I was editing the film at the... No, I was editing the film at the time, and it was actually...
Just in the middle of the edit, she was stuck on your face going...
Yeah. And well, we had just done a lot of the stuff with Karl, and the comedy that was coming out of Karl's performance was amazing. I was like, myself and Karl work really well together. So we actually met in Bunratty Castle, didn't we?
We did, yeah. Dirty Nellies, wasn't it? Yeah. Or no, it was across the way. But,
no, it wasn't Dirty Nellies.
Was it Dirty Nellies?
We met in Bunratty Castle, and I pitched the idea to Karl, and he went, yeah, let's do it. And I think it took about 2 years.
For about 10 years, people were saying, you should do a podcast. And I went, yeah. And I said, when someone asked me, I'll do it.
And had you tried other podcasts before, Karl?
I'd never done... No, I hadn't. I hadn't done anything with it. And I love the stage.
Were you cynical about it?
I was not cynical. I just love the stage, and it's one of those.
You love
it's all the extra stuff.
on live and in front of people.
So I'll step in and I can go to the mic and I can talk as long as you need. But the whole thing of organising it and whatever else and recording it and editing it, that to me is no. That's
And I can
I'm
obviously
not
do that
working
with
for a
the
living.
little radio background that I have.
Yeah.
But the other thing about it, and people won't know, a lot of people don't know this about Carl. Carl's a great conversationalist as well. So like myself and Carl, like I
didn't know that about
Yeah, didn't know. But on the surface, like we have great crack and all that and everything is slagging. But when you get down to a conversation with Carl, he's very knowledgeable about a lot of things and his conversation is great. And I was like, he'd be a great podcast host. So that's kind of where Carl came from as well.
And Carl, you're known to me chiefly as a gag. I would call you a kind of a crafter of gags.
Oh, yeah.
Apart from the fact that you perform really well. You're more of for me, you're more of like a person who writes. You're one of the sort of not. There's not many in Ireland. Even the comedians.
Yeah.
And I would, even the comedians. It's like it's not. You're a real writer's comedian.
I've done a lot of writing I've actually got to the point recently I've turned down people for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I was going no, and I've a couple other things I'm doing. So I do enjoy it. One of my favourite memories of writing a joke, it was a joke I wrote for Al Porter, and it was the one joke I wanted to take back.
Yeah.
Straight away I went, no, I want that back. And I remember the first time he did it on stage, the crowd erupted, and that laugh is mine, even though no one else knows, only Al knows. I'm there going, brilliant. But a guy in front of me turned around, hit me on the arm going, you couldn't write a fucking joke like that. And it actually meant more to me.
Yeah.
I didn't care that he didn't think it, but it was actually going, that's a sign of how good the joke was.
Yeah. So you were able to stand back and just
take
love the joke.
But I think it was a thing when I started that we'd literally suggest lines. So Tara Flynn had a joke about breaking up with a boyfriend that said, my friends did different things, to buy new clothes or do their hair. But I said, no, I suggested, but it was me that broke up with him. Why are you doing this stuff?
Yeah.
And she went, oh, and she did it and it really worked.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first joke I suggested to somebody. But then I'd suggest jokes for different people. I mentioned earlier off air with Kevin Bridges, and I got on the last tour, I suggested one line to him and he used it and he got an applause break, and I'd wreck his head by going, I love this show that we've written.
Yeah.
One line.
Does he write his stuff?
Oh, totally.
So he's a little writer.
I think Kevin's just off the charts genius.
Yeah.
Like the stories, anything, even a little
I watched
aside.
I was just flicking through the channels there last night, and I just watched. Obviously, Michael McIntyre is everywhere.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're bound.
Still.
It's a bit like Friends. You just like slick on, and he'll be there. But I saw him just there, and I went. It's one of those ones where you're sort of sick of seeing him. But then I was just going last night. I'm just going to give him 3 minutes here.
Oh.
And in the 3 minutes I watched him, he kind of gave me a perfect 3 minutes on mobile phones. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the architecture of what he started with.
Yeah.
Even as a comedian, I know he's going to top that now. He's going to top that, and that's not even the top.
Yeah,
and he did every single thing I predicted he would do, but I didn't know what he was going to say.
Yeah.
And it was just extraordinarily well produced, crafted, observational comedy. And it was on battery chargers and mobile phones.
Crazy.
And it was it was spot on, like.
Yeah.
And his stuff is that typical observational stuff where you're kind of laughing, but you're also nodding your head. And you're going, I know. Yeah, stop nodding your head.
The magic of Michael, it's funny, we mentioned John Bishop as well earlier, but John Bishop and Michael are celebrating 25 years of comedy, and so am I.
And me.
And you're 25 years as well.
25 years of Gift Grub.
Well, I didn't know that, but I was saying that the three of us, when I say John and Michael, I go, and myself. And when you think of what the three of us have achieved,
When you add it all together.
what we've achieved. But
How many
Michael,
All-Ireland medals we have now.
Michael has a magic. When you're gigging him I remember gigging in Preston University, and it was a shocking gig. I was on in the middle. I think Michael was closing, and the MC. It wasn't the performers. It was the audience were shit. And then Michael went on, and it was a different audience. The place was just lit up, and I remember going, "How the hell did he do?" And he did it in a minute. And I've seen Michael do that in a few.
Yeah, and part of it is their investment in him already.
But this was
Before he was-
this was
this is before-
2003.
Oh, this was before Michael McIntyre.
Michael wasn't famous.
Okay, so this was a great performance.
Seen him doing it in Brighton
Pardon me.
in a club that was good. It was a good night.
Yeah.
He just and he was on first because he was heading to another gig when we used to double up and all that. Lee Mack was someone, Al Porter, who I mentioned, could do that. People who just go on and the room changes.
Yeah.
I remember Mickey Flanagan doing it in Edinburgh in a gig that was horrendous, and we're all just going, this is shocking.
Yeah.
And Mickey walked on, and boom, and we're literally going, they've switched the audience.
Crazy, yeah.
You know.
Would you watch comedy when you go home?
Not as much as I used to always. If I was doing a gig, I felt wrong unless I'd watched all the other acts. But now I'm less so. I kind of have an ear if I can, if it's somewhere.
But would you find a Netflix special with Bill Burr or Dave Chappelle?
I would watch the odd one of those, but there's probably about 3 or 4 more that I haven't watched.
What do you think about somebody like? What do you think of the? Now, I have no idea really what I'm talking about here, so you'll almost have to hold my hand. But what about the idea of that there's been a kind of a revolution, a bit of a revolution in the last 10 years in comedy stand-up specials. So that in the sense that there have been. There was a reaction to, let's say, the Dave Chappelle's, let's say.
Stuff to say on
things,
stage.
Yeah, and things like Hannah Gadsby and stuff like that, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Nanette and Tig Notaro.
Yeah.
Any comments on that sort of, or is it just, listen, they're comedians, if they're either funny or they're not?
Yeah, I would. To simplify it, if it's funny, it's funny, and there's an audience for it. I often people go, oh, I don't like that, and it's almost like if I don't agree with them, they say, oh, I don't like him, and it's not necessarily with the material.
Do you ever watch a comedian go, that's brilliant? I don't personally find it funny, but it is brilliant.
Yeah, I would. Michael is like that. Michael McIntyre. Yeah. I've since I've known him, I go, I think he's brilliant, but he's not. That doesn't make me laugh.
Exactly.
And there's other comics. I don't think Michael would care.
No.
If I said that, there's other comics I watch, and I go, I do not know how that person.
But you understand that they are working.
I can see it, and I can see there's some quality there, but this leaves me cold.
But you're not in. It's not inexplicable to you.
No, I can understand some people liking it, but it's just that's not my thing.
Without naming names, and of course, are there people out there whose success is inexplicable to you?
You did just say that, didn't you?
Kind of. Well, no, not quite. No,
that was different.
There's people I can see, and I go, I don't get that. Yeah, there is.
Yeah, it's weird.
And one of them, I don't know him well, and I was told. He's the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And I felt bad about that.
Doesn't change anything.
I wouldn't. If someone else said it to me, I don't like that person.
Yeah.
And I went, I'm the exact same.
Yeah.
He leaves me cold.
Yeah.
And then someone said, apparently he's the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, that makes me
so I fall into all 3 categories of watching these people. So I see people I love and love. I see people I love and don't understand. I don't understand, but I could get them. And I see people who I don't understand and I don't like them.
Yeah.
So it's like the known Donald Rumsfeld, the known.
You mentioned Bill Burr. Bill Burr was in Kilkenny 2005.
Yeah.
And was the star of the festival.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, that guy's amazing. But we'd had Americans over most years.
Yeah.
And they'd be there and you go, oh, that guy's brilliant. Not that you'd never hear of him again, but they wouldn't quite
Here's an
be
interesting one. Tony, you did, remember we had when you were on my podcast, and we had a very interesting chat with you about you being kind of in the comedy circuit in New York.
Yeah.
And your journey through that. And you had some difficult personal times during that as well. But it was very interesting, and the rooms you got to play and the people you got to meet. Did you ever see, either of you ever see, I think I may have asked you this question, but Karl, it'll be interesting to hear this. Have you ever seen a couple of comedians who you just went, that comedian could take over the world, but they never did?
Yes.
In comedy terms, yeah. There would have been,
I mean, loads? Guys, it's a bit like Paul McGrath. They often say to Paul McGrath, somebody said, Paul McGrath, who's the greatest player you ever saw? Georgie Best or and he went, no, it was a guy called Dicey Flanagan.
Yeah, they always do that.
Oh, yeah.
And I went, who's Dicey Flanagan? He played for Dalkey United.
That's right, yeah.
And he was the greatest player I ever saw. And I went, well, why haven't we heard about him? And he went, he had no interest.
Yeah, that's always the way. I've seen...
So there are people out there.
No, there would have been people that I would see when I started and go, oh my God, that guy's amazing. But then, even before I started, so you'd see something like the stand-up show on BBC. So I started in 2000, so that was on in the mid-90s. And I'd see this guy go, oh my God, that guy is unbelievable. But then I'd be, in 2002, I'd go, oh my God, I'm on with that guy.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, that's the bit he did on the BBC. And sometimes that's it. They just had an amazing 20 minutes.
So in other words, they had a little stellar start, but they
they've amazing material, but they didn't put the work in or
follow it up.
Yeah.
It seems, for me anyway, there's a guy I started out with. We were on our very first show together. We somehow ended up in Gotham Comedy Club in front of 300 people the very first time we both ever did stand up, right? But at 23, when you're in New York, and of course this is happening.
Yeah.
But I did all right. I still have the tape, actually. It's funny, but like this guy, his name was Matt Miller. Big, massive. He was probably 6'9", I'd say, big, and he was a black guy, and he had this radio voice, this big deep voice. And I remember one of his, I think his opening joke. Remember the first time he's ever done stand up. He was like, I came home to my girlfriend's house. Dad never seen a black guy before. He was eating a box of saltines, and when I walked in the door, he dropped them on the floor. I said, hey, I didn't see that amount of crackers hit the floor since I last robbed a bank. That was his first joke. the place got them. 300 people
yeah.
erupted. But that guy he just was like, I have a job and I don't know. And I was going, work, leave your job. And
yeah, you see,
he passed away, actually,
you brought up
ago.
something there that is interesting. Comedy demands, especially when you're starting. I think not that I'm not in the same bracket really. I'm kind of on the radio and in sort of it's different. It's not a stand-up situation,
Sure.
but comedy demands that you're a self-starter. You've got to get up. You've got to get yourself. I want to do this. It's a real ambition-led thing. Like one guy I've watched over the years who his commitment to what he does craft-wise is very impressive, and that's Neil Delamere. And Neil Delamere, right, is a craftsman. He's a bit of a wordsmith. He gets it right. He tries to make X and Y come together and create a synthesis. But there's another side, and that is his ability to get up, go places, get things done, turn up, and keep knocking on the door. And his success now in all these comedy bloody talk shows over in England. He told me about all the process of all that. It's bizarre. And he is literally got to a completely different rung on the ladder than he was through sheer hard work and persistence.
And Neil's, I would say Neil's jokes, and this sounds like are almost like equations.
Yeah.
So he'd go, this is a thing.
That's not a bad.
So therefore, that is blah, blah. And I can't think of an example, but this is such a thing. But if you put that in, therefore, your answer is this.
Yeah.
And Neil would be going. I think Neil was going when I started 25 years ago. And yeah, there's no. I would say his work ethic.
Yeah, I love the work ethic.
But I think all of us are like that,
better than
Mario.
anyone.
We're speaking about you even starting out in the radio, and the other thing that we did, and you worked your ass off to get where you needed to get. Like with the film that I did that you guys were graciously in, that took me 10 years to do. And you got to
it depends on where it falls in your life as well, right? In your own personal life. So I felt that I had reached a kind of a small tipping point in my life where I was 26, 27. I had achieved some small success as an actor, but I was going backwards rather than forwards. And I felt like this waiting by the phone business for Werner Herzog to ring is a fool's game, to be honest. Especially when you've got as much energy as me. And, I would turn to drink and drugs if that energy can't be transferred.
Hello, friend.
Exactly.
Have you thought of the alternate life if you didn't have that skill or
entertainment?
No, but if you like the acting,
I would have turned into an alcoholic.
You genuinely.
I would have destroyed myself before I was saved by, let's say, somebody like my wife or somebody else. I would have had to have an intervention.
Oh wow!
Because I was much too driven.
But if you'd got a different, if you'd got a role, like in
a long running soap.
Yes, or now it doesn't have to be a soap, but like Love Hate, 10 seasons of Love Hate as a certain.
Oh no, that would have
saved you or destroyed you.
I'd say I would have still been gone. I could have written that better, and I would have, but it probably would have written something as well.
Yeah.
Or do you know what? I wouldn't have had the confidence to write. No, you're right.
But the writing thing, when you were talking earlier, it came from pressure.
The writing thing completely came from pressure, and then I fell in love with writing.
Yeah.
And people go, we're joined now by impressionist, actor, comedian, broadcaster, podcaster, and no, I don't care what they say. I don't care what people call me. But the reality is that I spend more time writing than I do anything.
Any of those.
Yeah.
But I never say I'm a writer.
Yeah.
But and it was an interesting thing we were talking about there. I write stuff, and I'm more and more cognizant, having listened to people talk about, great comedians talk about writing and all this. I'm much more interested in the idea of syntax and words and everything. And I know that this is in your book as well, your playbook, because a joke can be completely and utterly altered by a comma. Or an parenthesis.
Sure,
or
absolutely.
the juxtaposition of and but.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I was up at the Sligo Comedy Festival there and there was some new acts on, and I did 3 shows, and every night one of the support acts who I hadn't met before, I'm going, that joke, and I don't mean this patronising to them, that joke was wrong because you said that. If you said it like this, and they go, oh yeah,
it's simple.
It's just because of more experience that I can see what they're not seeing.
And Karl, I'll actually share this story, and you will
and it is a craft.
When we did the Galway Comedy Festival back in October, I was really annoyed going on the stage. Karl will attest to this, right? I wasn't happy.
Annoying? No, sorry.
Well, there's that too. But I was honest. I was pissed off. I didn't want to be there. I wasn't happy with a lot of things on the night, and I went out. And the first 10 minutes or so, I was just throwing my jokes out, just and you could see my face. I didn't want to be there. I wasn't happy. And something midway through, I went.
I remember hearing the change in it, and it's just the audience reacted.
You could hear the moment where I went, "What am I doing? I'm here to entertain these people."
Okay.
And I actually almost gave myself a kick in the arse in my head.
Right.
And I went, this is childish what you're doing and you're ruining your own thing.
Yeah.
And I just went, no. And I just, all of a sudden, my body just went up and I started delivering the jokes and gesticulating.
And I said it to him when he came off, and that's exactly what I could hear the change. It was like a gear change of.
Yeah.
Al was with us as
Now
well,
I'll
and yourself and
perform.
Al both.
Yeah.
Like, what were you doing at the start? And I was like, I was so annoyed, and I was taking my annoyance of those people out on the audience.
Yeah.
But to your point, Mario, you're talking about apostrophes and exclamation points. It's the delivery. It's the attitude, it's the character
everything
that you're
within
playing
it,
on.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
everything within it. And I went from doing the first 10 minutes of my act that I would do anywhere and would work, to it being in front of 700 people in the black box, and it died. Whereas I flipped it, put the act back on, and it resumed where I was. So a lot of it is attitude.
Yeah, so we went from side stage going, oh God, we have to avoid him when he comes off to, oh no, it's fine.
That's it as well. You know?
Just because your podcast is about, do you remember? Both of you try and take me back to a time where something happened in your life that maybe made... now, this you can use your imagination with this if you want to.
Okay.
Something happened in your life which you regard as a fundamentally changing moment in your life, either of you.
Well, I know what I realised with hindsight. And it was actually, I heard you talking to Jimmy Carr in an interview, I don't know how many years ago, that was 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been 18, 19, 19.
Yeah,
16.
and it was Jimmy was talking about any comedian they're trying to entertain their mother, and I actually stopped. I was driving. I was on the road towards Tullamore, and I remember stopping and going, how much this kind of threw me a bit. And it was, my mother had been sick. She'd passed away. She was 60 when she died, and passed away 22 years ago. And when she'd be there, she'd call me out, sometimes be there looking after her, and she just want tea and toast and stuff like that. And so just going, cup of tea and all that. I'd be a character. I'd be, how are you, Jerry? Come on. Father Michael here. She's no idea who's here, God. And I'd be the priest talking to me. Oh, I'm not there.
Yeah.
And I'd start her laughing. And it was that thing of my sick mother, I'm making her laugh. And then I'd talk to her, rather than when she's upset. And I had ideas about being a writer, but never a performer. I never saw myself as a performer. And even when I started doing comedy, I thought this is a good way of attracting attention, that I could write something or work. I did TV production in college, and I thought this will get me a job, some kind of production thing that I can say, why don't you do this? Or, that's a good idea, Karl, thanks for that. But I used to do that for my mother. Like, my mother was a Housewife of the Year finalist. She used to love it. And there'd be a...
With Gabo?
It was on the radio. I think it might have been Gabo, or I'm
Remember
not
he
sure
did
before.
Calicoes and Gas?
Yeah, it was Calicoes in 1977, and there was a documentary about it. She's on the poster for the documentary, a little picture at the side.
Yeah.
But there'd be a certificate up on the wall. She won the Cork Regional, like the Munster final kind of thing, and then she got to the final, but she didn't win the overall thing. And I'd be like, oh, Jerry, I'd be like me then, and, oh, mother, I was in town today, someone those mugs, best mother in the world, but sure, couldn't buy it for you. You entered and didn't win, didn't you? And she'd be laughing, and it was all that just to make her feel good.
Are you saying that she gave you your first inkling into what a live audience was like?
The muscle of what I call the comedy muscle that we all have from performing was getting defined
by her,
from trying to cheer
brilliant.
up my mother, who was sick at the time.
Brilliant.
And it's looking back, I realise it, rather than...
Yeah, it's a great propellant as well.
I'd be dominant in a conversation if I'm out with friends before I performed. And once I took to the stage, that all just faded. I could sit and listen.
But that's brilliant that the thing that drove you to do what you do can still be remembered all these years later.
Yeah.
So, for example, my grandmother she used to be a great champion of me. Like, she used to go, I'm genuinely saying this, I just think you have it.
Yeah.
And I'd go, I don't care, I fucking believe her. And it's that thing of truly having somebody that believes in you that can get you through some dark times. Like, I'm not feeling well, there's a big crowd out there, how do I summon the energy? And then I kind of just go, her, you're great, you're great. And that does enough for me. So, but it's great that you have something like that. And
Yeah.
Back on. What about you, Tony?
I think I should have answered first, because that was really deep.
You didn't know my mother. How are you going to follow
Mario, picture the scene, right? It's New York, right? It's Gotham nightclub, right? Gotham Comedy Club, right? Now I'm 23, so this is all normal for me, right? There's a crack dealer on one side of the street and a pimp on the other, right?
It's not far off.
I'm in the middle. I have a bottle of Jack Daniels in my hand now, right? No,
right. So I could go down that route, but I think listening to what you were saying there, like, to be honest with you, I had a really hard time in school, in primary school and the first 3 years of secondary school. But I remember making the lads laugh in 6th class in school, and they laughed. And the end of that year was grand. because I was able to make them laugh. And I somehow lost that for the first 2 or 3 years of secondary school. And I was getting further and further down in this not fitting in. And like, I don't want to say the word bullied because it's, I don't know. But like, I just wasn't fitting in. And I started making smart comments in probably second or third year. And the lads would laugh. And I was going, oh, they're laughing. But I was getting in trouble now. It was to the detriment maybe of my education and my scholastic things. But I realised being funny, not just in my friend group at home, but doing it in school and making the lads laugh, the currency of that meant I wasn't getting a grueling in between walking to classes and stuff like that. And as I said, it was to the detriment of my scholastic, but I never had any scholastic ambitions anyway. But I genuinely think realising that making people laugh is a little bit of a get out of jail card.
Oh yeah,
or
I mean,
other stuff.
in Irish life, I mean, Tommy, of course, has gone to town on this, but in a way, Michael D. Higgins has gone to town on it before Tommy did it. Michael D. Higgins did it and Tommy put laughs on it. But the comedian is the soothsayer. He is the filler.
Yeah.
He is the poet. He is the wise one. He is the fool in King Lear. It's the one that can see things that the others can't see and makes it funny. And so, of course, you were respected because to do that, it's also feared in a way because I had similar experience, and that was in about 6th class as well. There was always one fella who was huge. Right? How did he get so big?
Yeah.
So the hormones took off early.
Because he's 15 and
He stayed back twice, yeah.
Right? This fella was just big. And
Slow John.
And he was just big. And if he turned his attention to you, that was it, curtains.
Yeah.
And I was average size, and so he turned his attention to me anyway. I was at the back of the class, and he started lumbering towards me like King Kong. And then the lads are there, Jesus, Mario's going to fucking get it here. And so I only did the thing that I could do, which was I started doing an impression of him before he came down.
There you go, yeah.
Right, and suddenly the crowd started looking at me and then looking back at him. Then they weren't looking at me anymore. They just stared at him as I was doing it. And suddenly it was me doing an impression of him sitting there while all the class looked at him.
Yeah.
And his face went putrid and red, and he almost crumbled in front of me.
That's it.
And I remember thinking, because I still remember to this day, holy Christ, what have I just done? And how powerful is that?
There you go.
And what did I just do to the person? I did what we all fear in all of our lives. I humiliated somebody, which is an awful thing to do. It was, and also the thing we fear most in life, to be caught with our pants down.
This is it. I realised that you didn't have to be the best scrapper in Waterford.
No.
You could just have the biggest mouth or the fastest mouth.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you weren't the one who was
Yeah.
kind of... I remember one time a fella coming up and crushing a packet of Hot Lips crisps into me hair.
Yeah.
And I smelt like him for the day. You know what I mean? But if you were able to get there before that happened, it was never going to happen again, if that makes sense. And I remember, on genuinely now, and I don't ever talk about this, but like, first 9 years of school for me were horrific.
Right.
I loved the last 3 years of school.
But why was it horrific for you? I mean,
I just didn't. I started a year younger than everyone else. I was
you were a little bit behind
a
the
little
curve.
bit behind, and I think I was still.
I was the same, actually.
Yeah, I think I still liked wrestling, and I still liked toys, and I still liked things that were kind of babyish, I think, for other lads. And I kind of get it now.
Yeah.
As an adult, looking back, if I was a bit more mature and a fella was still a little bit behind, I'd kind of probably do the same.
The Waterford thing is very funny about the scrapping. Did you ever come across this in school, Karl? The sort of the mythology around scrapping, right, or fighting. So,
There was a guy in my year who I was friendly with later in life, but he was very tall for first year, but I don't think he got much taller. And he beat up a fifth year.
Yeah, legend.
A fifth year bumped off him in the corridor, and he just grabbed him. And like the guy in my year was very talented sportsman, but physically strong, and his reputation.
But this is it. It was all done on a
preceded him
ranking
from- yeah.
system. He's the best fighter in the class. He's the second best.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
How do you find this
well,
out?
hold on.
My best mate John did this. So there was a guy really annoyed him, and he did one day. He said, we were just like, and there was like, it wouldn't have been a fair fight. I think John would have probably lost if there'd been a fight. But he took a square of dairy milk, put it in his mouth, got all the chocolate soft, stuck it to the seat. But the seat would flip. Oh, it's disgusting. So just stuck it to the seat. So your man puts down his seat, sits down. So for whatever 2 hours after break or
He's
after
sitting in
class,
melted
he's
chocolate.
sitting on melted chocolate. So he'd get up, wouldn't feel a thing, and as he's walking out the gate, John would shout, "Montezuma's revenge," like as if he's just shot himself because he
Right,
drank the wrong water. And I thought it was incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it was funnily enough, he came up after school couple of years after school, someone was saying, "You did that, Spain. You did that." I mean, I didn't do that. And I said, "Do you think I'd waste dairy milk?" And went, "Yeah." I suppose you didn't.
Yeah, it's the thing you do in school is, Matt, we used to do a thing where you couldn't shower in the showers naked.
Yeah.
You had to go in with another underpants on you. So that means you had a spare underpants
Really?
Okay.
in your bag, right? So, oh yeah, we couldn't, like you wouldn't be, oh, you're in the nude, are you? You're in the nude, what are you? Well, what's the story with you, boy?
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at me in the nude, is it? And the teacher wants to look at me, like, no, they didn't, but that was the thing, you couldn't be seen in the,
Yeah.
and it was probably, you were going through puberty, something.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, or
You're afraid
that's wearing,
something.
You were
Yeah.
afraid. So you'd have the spare underpants on you, and we used to hold the towel up on the shower.
Yeah.
So we had like singular showers,
Yeah.
right? And you'd hold the towel up while you're having the shower and you'd be looking at each other. And no one would leave the towel down. You'd have the spare underpants on you. So you go back, right? And you take off the underpants underneath the towel and then you put on the clean one. But what we figured out then when we got to about transition year was everyone had a spare underpants. So one week,
You'd steal
I
the
put the
underpants?
spare underpants, my spare underpants, into one of the lads' pockets of his jacket. So when we came out, I was like, "Where's my underpants?" And we all knew I was out there doing it. And it was one of our friends. We didn't, you know what I mean? But we came out of the shower and I was like, "That's my spare underpants is gone. I've only the wet underpants with me." And then I went, "Here, is that my underpants in your pocket?" "Oh, I didn't take that." And the whole place erupted. But it was like, you know, it was just fun. Obviously.
yeah.
But like, it was those types of things that you were learning to do, Pat, that I think it got me through school, definitely.
One of the lads, actually my mate John again, he was like, "Oh, your fly's down." And he suddenly said, there was like 5 or 6 there, suddenly realised he's about to be told, about to be asked, "Why did you notice? What were you looking?" You know, He goes, "Your fly's down." And he goes, "Tony told me." And then Tony's like, "Oh,
It's crazy.
And he says, "Kenneth said it to me." And then Kenneth goes, "Yeah, Liam opened it or pulled it down." And a guy just walked into the room and went, "Yeah, he unzipped you." And he's like, "What?" And everyone knows what happened. And it was just that thing of, "Yeah." And I remember going, I wasn't involved, I was there, but I just remember going, this is just mental stuff, like, you know.
It's what's good about it is you can look back and you kind of go, "What were we thinking?" But then you see fellas who are our age or my age and your age, Karl, and they're still kind of in that kind of mindset.
Oh yeah, they never go out of it.
Kind of,
that's a bit sad. My cousin, I think of this recently. My cousin met a guy he went to school with after school, a few years later, and he goes, "Well, Frogger, how are you?" And he goes, "I'm not Frogger anymore. I'm Kevin." And my cousin goes, "Okay, Frogger." And anytime someone talks about transitioned people who don't like being dead named, it's exactly what I think of. Yeah. "Okay, Frogger."
Fellas with nicknames, yeah.
You know, you'll always be Frogger to me. I'm not accepting your new identity.
Well, it's so obvious that you have such a good rapport as well. I mean, how long have you known each other? So
just today. I met him today.
It feels like that. We only met on the first day of filming.
The first day of filming, yeah.
so you met through the hurler?
Yeah. I didn't know Karl and Karl didn't know me.
Stephen Ryan.
Anybody listening, if you want to see a film, Tony did the hurler, and we were all in it. John Kenny and Dave McSavage and Tony Kelly and Karl Spain, and who else was in it?
Marty Morrissey.
Oh, Marty.
Elva Trill, Sophie Vavasseur. My God, when you start naming out the people,
I know, it's great, isn't
crazy,
it?
Yeah.
And poor John Kenny.
Poor John.
You know, getting to know John was actually the greatest thing. I met him for everyone's, like, when he died, I was at the funeral and people were like local. I'm from Limerick as well, so people are going, "Oh God, you would have known him forever." And I did know of John, but I only met him properly in September.
Yeah.
And we went for a coffee. My girlfriend knew him and her family live out near John. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, geez, I'd love to go for a chat with you, Karl." So we spoke on the phone, arranged to meet for coffee, and he walks in, and I'd just there ahead of him. And I said, "What you want, John? Coffee?" He says, No, I'll get this. And I said, "No, I get it, John. I asked you out, right?" And he gave me a wink. "It's a date, is it?" And I knew instantly I'm going to get on with him.
Yeah.
And it was 2 hours, and he's telling me about experimental theatre that he was into and watching.
That's right, ballet.
And I was there, and it was like about 10 minutes in, I'm chatting with an old friend here.
Yeah.
And when we met in Galway at the festival, we did the gig together.
That's right.
And we did a Q&A for the movie the day after. And John he actually was brilliant on stage. And he sat down at one point because he wasn't feeling well. And the crowd did their best to lift him again. Yeah. And I was just going, but in the dressing room and everything, because obviously Tony knew him as well, and Stephen Ryan was there, and Barry Murphy, who would have known him, was there. And we're all chatting. And I was like going, geez, I feel like I've known him forever. And he was talking about Sligo, where I've just come from this week, about, I'll see you in Sligo. It was the last text I got from him. And I just remember Tony texted me going, I heard John's dead. And I just couldn't believe it.
He made such an impact. He made such an impact on me, genuinely. When I did The Hurler as a web series, right, in 2013 when I came home from New York, and I wrote this coach character in it, and I got a local actor to play him, and I just went, if I ever get anything with this, I want John Kenny to play him. In 2012, I think it was. And I eventually got John. John was one of the first people cast in the film. And I remember my mum seeing John on a show on the afternoon show on RT, and she went, isn't it a pity John Kenny wouldn't answer your emails and do your film? Oh. And I went, yeah, it is, ma'am, yeah. And I went upstairs, and an hour later, John Kenny rang me after leaving the show. And he was like, Tony, it's John Kenny here. And I nearly fell down to weakness, because every lad, definitely outside of Dublin anyway, every lad from the country, quote unquote, had Unbelievables videos when they were growing up. And he was like, him and Pat, but I loved John always, right?
But John was there before, when he had Pat with him.
Of course, but I loved John growing up. But anyway, the next day I was up in John Kenny's kitchen, and Margie, his wife, was making me lunch, and we rehearsed the scenes immediately. But John became... Me and John, from that day, he would text me and call me most days, most weeks. He became, I won't even say a father figure because it would be insulting. It was nothing to do with age. He just became my friend. And he was advising me, and I showed him cuts of the film, and he told me how to make things funnier in edits. Yeah. The night I found out that in a rumour from a journalist friend of mine, it was rumoured that he would die. I said, it couldn't be. I spoke to him 2 days ago. He invited me to go up to him and Margie for lunch next week. It's not possible to be true. I just didn't want to believe it. He's supposed to come to my wedding this summer. I cried more over John Kenny than I have over relatives. But the day it was announced, it was the Friday when it came out, if you remember, Karl, and on the Saturday, the Underground Film Awards were on in Dublin. The Hurler was nominated for Best Film. And I said, I'm not going, I can't, because I'd done my radio show on WLR that day, and I actually cried for the 3 hours. It's the most unprofessional display of radio that anyone's ever done. I was going, I'm going to play The Water Boys now, because myself and John Kenny sang this song down in Tully's, I can't. And I'm putting the thing right. I was in bits.
And he loved music as well.
He did. He loved, getting to play music with John just up in his sitting room. Or in a pub in Waterford or whatever. He was just... But anyway, long story short, I went to the awards, and I was nominated for the Rising Star Award at the thing, and I didn't win it. And I turned to Ceann, my fiancé, and I went, we're getting out of here now. As soon as they announced we didn't win the other one, because this is embarrassing. John is dead, and I'm up here losing an award. It's disgraceful. And I tried to reach Margie, his wife, because I get on really well with Margie as well. I love her, right? And I couldn't find Margie's number anywhere, or her email, and I knew I had it, and I couldn't find it. And my mum actually said to me, text John's phone. They're going to check it. And just say, Tony, this is for Margie. It's Tony. Will you please ring me? And I texted before we left for Dublin. And they went, right, we're now going to announce the award for Best Independent Feature. And I went, to Ceann, right, get ready now. I said, because I'm in bits here. I can't handle this. And my phone buzzed on the table, and it said John Kenny. And I got this chill, I just went, I can't even look at what that says. And then they went, and the winner is The Hurler.
Oh, dear.
And I just went up on the stage, and Eddie Jackson, who's in the cast, happened to be there. And I just did that to Eddie. I beckoned him, because I couldn't do it on my own. Yeah. And I'm usually very able to hold myself together. Yeah. But for whatever it was about John and this, I just couldn't do it. And I stood on the stage, and that's actually where I met Patrick Berg. Patrick was there, and a couple of dignitaries from the Irish film industry were there. And I don't even know what I said, but obviously dedicated the award to John. And it was just so special. But Karl was at the funeral as well, Have you ever seen a send-off like that in your life?
Yeah, no, it was something else. The
respect, but the artistry. His whole funeral was a performance. There was Sharon Shannon played at the graveside, and didn't play they sang Margaritaville, and Sharon played the box and all that. It was the most beautiful send-off for the most beautiful soul I've ever seen. It was just...
And everyone, people I've met, they all have such great stories about John. Do you know, that's the thing.
What a loss.
What a heart.
I'm so glad I got to know him, but it was just taken away straight away.
He was a sweetheart, and he was a lovey more than a comedian.
Yeah.
He was.
He
was up for the crack.
No, as in he had the actor's heart more than the comic actor.
He was a romantic.
Yeah. My girlfriend, he took my girlfriend and one of her friends back home with him one night. I know the story starts in a certain, sounds wrong. Yeah. But she was telling me this, and I was like, what? So myself and John brought us back because we were in the pub, and he brought us back to continue the crack. And I was like, too many questions are going to sound. I said, oh yeah, Margie got up and was like, oh, John. And like,
That's
so
right.
there was nothing untoward. His wife was waiting at home going, oh, who's he brought back?
Yeah.
And I think she made him sandwich or toast or something
right.
like that.
But this is it.
But it was
That's
that it. He going, shut, jeez, there's a bit of crack. There's nothing bad. It's just joyous.
He had a big chandelier in the house. When you
What
went,
did he play in?
Everything.
Play everything, yeah.
He did, but he like his guitar in the thing with Pat, he played guitar.
Yeah.
But like he handed me like some sort of a weird bouzouki type Indian guitar.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, young fella, you play that now." And I went, "John, I can't play this. You can't, the strings on it, you can play it, I can play it. Start putting a tune out." And I just start playing this thing and, "No, look, that's a G. You have that there now." And we just play these random instruments. But everyone had that kind of a story about John.
Yeah.
And Margie because of the thing. But like, he legitimately was the most... selfishly for me, the loss is I got to be friends with one of my childhood heroes, and he became a mentor to me, and it was just caught all too short. But like I've just the amount of love you could see from his family and friends and people. He was one of the most special people that.
And that gig, there's when he wasn't well on stage and just sat down, but literally the audience, I was like, wow, that's a special.
Yeah, there's
moment. The audience lifted him up again.
There was a very special connection between Ireland and the Unbelievables.
Yeah. Oh,
unbelievable!
Yeah,
like because it was going straight to the core of who we are. Yeah. Do You Remember is the name of the podcast, and Karl Spain and Tony Kelly are the two podcasters.
It's not normally this sad.
Who have joined us on GoLoud, and good luck with it, lads.
Yeah, well, look, we're delighted.
Get yourselves a sponsor now.
That's it.
Something nostalgic as well. What's nostalgic?
Well, yeah, anything nostalgic at all. But look,
Kimberly Mikado and
Wagon Wheels.
Wagon Wheels, sponsored by Wagon Wheels.
We're going to make them big again.
Sponsored, yeah, exactly. You're going to be sponsored by something really kind of nostalgic.
Yeah, but look, we're delighted to be with GoLoud, and we're delighted to be doing the podcast.
Well done, lads.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks a million.
Well done, lads. Thank you so much.
And that's it. My thanks to Tony Kelly and Karl Spain for agreeing to do that podcast with me. In return, I did one with them. Thanks, guys. And as I mentioned, I'm on tour all over the country. I'm in the INEC on the 5th of April. Some tickets available there, as some tickets are available in Castlebar on the 12th and the TLT on the 19th. My thanks, as always, to deluxebathrooms.ie for their ongoing support and continuing sponsorship of the Mario Rosenstock podcast. Check them out. Their amazing spend and save offer is back. Get €100 off for every €1,000 spent. Price slashed on toilets, freestanding baths, tiles, tapware and more. In store at Dundalk Retail Park and Little Island in Cork, or online at deluxebathrooms.ie. Get online, check them out, folks. The sale must end on March 30th, so get your skates on. Thanks to everybody, but especially thanks to you. And remember, tell one other person about my podcast if you can. I'll see you the same time, same place next week. Thanks and bye.